Government Secrets with Lee Carp and Grab Elwood, episode pretty sure it's 12. Google dog. Now I'm calling it a Google dog because Google's involved somehow.
It is kind of, I'll go with Google dog. Well, killer Google dog. But it is kind of amazing that like I can reel off numbers on like, you know, how much wealth is amassed into the hands of the top 3 Americans, but I can't nail the episode number. That one is elusive.
That totally eludes both of us. We have all these other just stats, just 30,000 people die a year because they don't have health care. But I think it's episode, I don't know, 13F. I don't know. So what's your first GovSeek seg, buddy?
Well, I figured we might as well start off by talking about this, the Supreme Court nomination. Now, we've already talked about, so today is the hearing. So their Congress is, doing their circle jerk where they all stand in a circle and ask questions as they jerk each other off. And so they're doing this hearing, and I haven't watched any of it, but I can guarantee I read a couple of the questions, and I can guarantee you most of the questions are, will you overturn Obamacare and stuff like that. Now, I'm not saying those questions aren't at least a little important, but you and I have already talked about how, there's about a 90% similarity between the justices put forward by Obama versus put forward by Trump. Kavanaugh and Merrick Garland voted together 91% of the time when they were on the bench together. So I want to take a step further and say that something that will not be discussed in your mainstream media or anywhere, almost anywhere else, is that in this grand hearing where they all get together and grill these Supreme Court nominees to see if they're good enough to represent our country's highest court, there will never be a discussion of the fact that in order to get to that spot, whether it was right, left, doesn't matter, in order to be a nominee for the Supreme Court of the United States, you already have to have signed off on the incredibly gruesome, horrific reality of our empire. You have to kind of largely be fine with the fact that, 100,000 Venezuelans have died from our economic sanctions over just the past 3 years alone. You have to be fine with our kind of endless bombing and everything. Because anyone, if there were a judge that were to speak out about that stuff and say, what we're doing is morally repulsive, if they were to do that, they would not be the nominee. They would never get to that spot. Their entire career has already set up the reality that they have accepted most, 99% of everything that kind of the American empire stands for. Not just the killing overseas, but the unfettered capitalist exploitation of the almost entirety of American workforce. There's just so many levels of kind of disgusting oppression that you have to already be just like totes cool with in order to get up to that point.
Yes. You have to have climbed pretty high on the empire ladder and the casualties, the collateral damage of this horrible empire. And I love too, in the media, they're like, is Amy is she pro-life? We don't know. Like, are you kidding me? Trump appointed her, Pence appointed her. They're so she's a right-wing judge. She went to Notre Dame. Why are you like, I don't know. Of course she is. They're trying to stack it to overturn Roe v. Wade. Like, what's so hard? It's like, did the Lakers get LeBron James to try to win a title? I don't know. Like, it's unbelievable.
Right. And it serves a purpose to argue about that. Now that Roe v. Wade is important, but there's a reason that's all they're arguing about. Like that is like that and Obamacare is most of what they're arguing about. And it serves to make us forget about all the things they agree on. It serves to make us not question like, oh, wow, she's a sociopath on like all these other issues. Let's just bicker about Roe v. Wade and not even whether she thinks like Americans should have health care, because that's not what a judge decides, right? A judge would decide a little bit of the law as to whether it's legal for the government to, force people into the Obamacare exchange. Like that would be the questioning. Not, do you think it's like horrific that in the richest country in the fucking world, like kids are dying? Like our maternal mortality rate is like 100th in the world. 2 kids a day die as they're being born for fucking no reason other than just largely poverty. I mean, the number of kids that are dying for, tainted water and other things like. Do you think that's fucking horrific? No, we're not going to ask you that. We're just going to ask you, like, legally, do you feel they dotted their I's and crossed the T's in the Obamacare legislation?
Yeah, it's so like it gets everybody to just step over another homeless person to argue about this. Like, oh my God, yes, Roe v. Wade is important. I don't want that overturned. But like the reason we're still talking about Roe v. Wade rather than what we should, this shows you that, like you said, it's such a clear distraction to make you think that these two parties are different. There's these like 2 issues that is where they're different. Like that's it. Like you said, we should be debating on how good our Medicare for all is going to be. We can't even have that. It's like, and I remember during the primary going, well, if it's Biden or one of these centrists, all they're going to do, and if they get in the White House, they'll say, we saved Obamacare, and everyone will do backflips and say, that's amazing, rather than, I want to give this thing that 85% of all Americans want, which is free healthcare, especially now. Like watching these 2 last debates, the vice president and the presidential debate, I'm like, they were Republican debates. It was unbelievable. And they could so easily, and they know this, the Democrats could so easily be crushing. Like Pence is the most beatable guy in a debate, and Kamala Harris, like,
yeah, if they actually stood for something that it would make Pence look like a fucking fool. I mean, if Kamala Harris were doing just rants about how many innocent civilians we're killing with our drone bombs, like Pence would just look like a fucking idiot. But instead, you've got 2 right-wingers trying to agree on most things.
I know, they were just agreeing and like, you don't agree with me. Yes, I do. Like a Republican saying to a Democrat, you don't agree with me. And then they go, yeah, I do. It's the same thing Biden did. No. I never said Green New Deal. Like unbelievable. It's like they could be waxing the floor with these guys, but they want to stay. They want to get like suburban, moderate Republican Mitt Romney people, like Reagan Republicans. They want to get them to vote because they know, they just assume that, I mean, are they aware of the fact that there's a bunch of us that are not going to vote for Joe Biden? Do they know this? Because, and people go, Graham, the Supreme Court, and you're letting the Republicans take away Roe v. Wade. And I always go, well, look, Ruth Bader Ginsburg was asked to step down during the Obama administration, and she didn't.
And another, I don't know if I mentioned this last week, but something I hadn't really thought about is, although she might have thought that the next president would be Hillary or something, so she'd be fine staying in longer, there's no way she was certain that it would be both the Senate and the presidency would remain in Democratic hands. So it's bizarre and selfish to be like, oh yeah, the presidency and the Senate are both going to facilitate a somewhat progressive justice following the Obama administration. It doesn't make any sense. You're like, what makes you so sure of that?
Yeah, exactly. And Obama had a chance to shoehorn somebody in the end of his second term and didn't. I mean, like the Democrats could have stacked this. They would have this liberal. We wouldn't even be here.
Yeah, and I think I'm certain I said this last week, but I think the biggest answer to anybody who's like, well, you got to vote Democrat for the Supreme Court, is that the Democrats right now, if they had any kind of moral core or ethical backbone, they could stop Amy Coney Barrett from getting into the Supreme Court right now. All they'd have to do is impeach Trump for something legitimate, which there's a long list of. I mean, the guy violates the emoluments clause like every morning in his first 10 minutes while he's taking a dump. I mean, he's violated it so many times, or just endless corruption, or killing innocent civilians, war crimes, just again and again things to impeach him for. But they won't do that because the Democrats also violate all those laws or are involved in them or fear that the next Democratic president is also going to be doing those things. So all they'd have to do is impeach him, because impeachment would trump, sorry for the pun, would trump the Supreme Court nomination. And so they wouldn't be able to get her in because they'd have to deal with impeachment. So they could stop it, but they won't, because they're equally corrupt.
Why is the party that has signed off on Trump's increase in his war budget, his border wall, his extending the Patriot Act? That's what the democratically controlled Congress has done in the last 2-3 years. That's what they've done. Well, they've had control for 2 years. Yeah, over 2 years. This is what they've done. They've signed off on all this awful shit. You know, Nancy Pelosi stands and applauds when they have Maduro, this puppet, stand up in Congress. Like Guaido. Well, right. Maduro was the one that got. Yeah, when Guaido, the CIA puppet, stands up, Nancy Pelosi claps. Nobody saw that on the social media. We only saw that when she rips up his speech. Oh, wow. I know.
That was the only time she stood up and cheered, was for Guaido, the CIA-backed puppet. And do you have any idea with her 175-year-old knees, what it takes to stand up? That is how much she loves CIA-backed coup that could kill hundreds of thousands. Those old, ancient, decrepit, breaking, splintering balsa wood knees somehow got up the energy to cheer for that.
Well, she just put expensive ice cream on both of her knees, and that's how she was able to stand up. All right, friend, you want to go to another Gov't?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so today is not Christopher Columbus Day. It's Indigenous Peoples Day. Christopher Columbus, as we've talked on this show, is a monster. And he brought nothing but genocide. So I wanted to revisit that today so that everybody's real clear here. Anyone's like, he was a hero and you stop tearing down his statues. No, he was a monster.
It's because you're anti-Italian, Graham.
Yes, it means I hate Italians. Absolutely. Even though I brought up the Cipino, but now clearly, like,
you had all the Italians in the comment board, you know, they were like, I love Graham, he always brings up Italian food, and now they're like, fuck you, Graham, you're killing our heroes.
Right. And when I went after Robert Francis O'Rourke, it means I hate the Irish. That's what that means. When he had a fake name of Beto, which shows you that anyone can have a fake, they can just pretend to be Latino. He's about as Latino as a pint of Guinness. Anyway, let's talk about this. And I want to refer, and I did this, I think, on our first episode, The People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn, a book I highly recommend reading, but read it in short. I couldn't, like, it's not one of these like, oh, I read it for 3 hours. It's really awful.
Yeah, it only takes a few pages of the details of how Columbus was, cutting out their eyeballs because they wouldn't bring him gold. That's not a real page turner. You kind of get a dose. It's like, it's like doing a shot of some like really cheap vodka. Like, you're not just like, give me more. You kind of do it because you got a goal in mind. I'm gonna get plastered, but you don't.
Yeah, it's a half click above turpentine.
Yeah.
So this is something, again, when people are like, you're rewriting history. No. This is from Columbus's own journal. So he wrote this. Here's an excerpt. I'll even screen share it with everybody. We'll really get into how fun this is. So I'm going to screen share this. All right. So you can see in the bold ink, this is from when Columbus and his sailors came ashore carrying swords, speaking oddly. The Arawaks, which is the indigenous tribe, ran to greet them, brought them food, water, and gifts. Food, water, and gifts. And he didn't go, oh, these people are really cool. Let's mellow out and join their ways. No,
these people are really cool. Let's get the fuck out of here before we ruin their lives.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe we'll trade with them a little bit, but let's get out of here. No, this is what he said. This is Columbus, a genocidal rapist. And there's evidence that he was sex trafficking children. He's a monster. They brought us parrots and balls of cotton and spears and many other things, which they exchanged for the glass beads and hawk's bells. They willingly traded everything they owned. They were well built with good bodies and handsome features. They did not bear arms. They do not know them, for I showed a sword. They took it at the edge and cut themselves out of ignorance. Well, that right there says he's cool. Ha ha. Don't tell him, hey, watch out. You might not know what this is. He's like, oh, wait till this. They're going to grab the sharp end. This will be hilarious. Oh, wow. You're a sociopath.
Yeah.
They have no iron. The spears are made of cane. They would make fine servants. Again, here are these nice people. Boy, the first thing out of your mind is that, should we be friends with them? Can we trade? Maybe we can learn from them. Maybe we can trade ideas. No, wow, these guys would make great servants. That's what they would do.
It's my second thought when I meet someone is right. What kind of servant would this person be? First thought is, could I sex traffic this person?
Right.
Second thought, would they make a good servant? Yeah.
Those are the first two things you said to me when we met in person, by the way. You said those things.
I decided that no one was going to pay for you as a sex traffic victim, Graham. I'm sorry. I didn't think you'd really, bring in the big bucks. No insult intended, but.
No, we were in the green room of Flappers getting ready to do a live Jimmy Dore show, and you turned to Jimmy and went, boy, your buddy Graham would make a great servant. I remember that.
He's a strapping young man. I think he could carry 3-4 bales of hay.
He grabbed, and here, what do you think of this? And you pulled out a knife, and I grabbed the sharp end. And he went, well, he's not too bright, but that was how we first met.
Well, that most people that live in Los Angeles, they tend to be that naive. They just grab the sharp end, and it's adorable.
They're just like, oh, is this a yoga mat?
Yeah. And then I laugh and run away. Yeah.
It was so great. But this is the other thing that Columbus said in his journal, which I think you said in similar language. With 50 men, we could subjugate them all and make them do whatever we want. So that's his first.
And I got bad news. When he says whatever we want, he doesn't mean like play lawn tennis with us, or we could go sailing together as a group.
Nope. He wrote this: as I soon arrived in the Indies on the first island which I found, I took some of the natives by force in order that they might learn and might give me information of whatever there is in these parts. So here are these nice people giving and trading whatever, rather than just communicating them like, oh, we're all human beings. I've tortured them and got info that way because I'm just a horrific monster. And then this is what he wrote. He insisted he had reached Asia, but it was Cuba, an island off the coast of China. He describes were pure fact, part fiction. Hispaniola is a miracle. Mountains and hills, plains and pastures are both fertile and beautiful. The harbors are unbelievably good, and there are many wide rivers of which the majority contain gold. There are many species and great mines of gold and other metals. Boy, I wish he would have wrote that glowingly and that fondly about other human beings.
Yeah. Well, and here's where you actually get to something about capitalism and corporatism in this, is that he went from country to country to try and fund this trip to what he said was going to be a quicker route to India, which was a big trading partner. So they were, very much wanted to find this quick route to India. So he goes to various countries. But he can't get enough money until he goes to Spain. Spain, their empire's getting bigger, and they say, oh, we would love that. So they fund his journey, which I'm sure was expensive for the time, to go to what they think is going to be India and make them a lot of money. So he arrives there, he meets these natives where he sees some gold on them. And so he assumes gold must just be everywhere because some of them are wearing a gold trinket or something. And he needs to get money to repay his debt for this fucking trip. So, this is like it's like a business, where you've taken out a loan of $2 million, and now you've got to pay it back. And you've just found out, he's slowly finding out that he didn't find the shorter trip to India, and they're not coming back with tons of gold. They're coming back with like a little bit here and there because they're afraid he's going to kill them or whatever, because he is killing people for not bringing him enough gold. And so they give him a little, but it's not nearly enough to pay off those debts. So then he realizes the only thing that are really going to let him pay off this debt is to bring back servants to Spain. And so he starts bringing back, and half of them die en route. And, they start enslaving them and stuff like that. And he's basically bringing back what he can to try and pay off this debt because it wasn't what they thought it'd be, which was a quick route to India. And so, then you're basically seeing how the profit motive works even way back then. You don't fucking take out a loan if you don't know how you're going to pay it back.
Well, and it's just like, it's the early stages of toxic capitalism. Yeah. Just like, hey, I don't know how we're going to fund it. Well, let's just get some debt. We'll give governments to pay for it. Who cares? And then who gets screwed over? The working class people, the regular people. That's how we're going to do this. And it's like, oh, he was the first pyramid scheme. The first like venture capitalist pyramid scheme is what he did. And it just like, you really see how all of everything that's happening today started by these jackasses coming from Europe and just fucking raping and pillaging the land. That's all they did. They just went everywhere and ruined everything. Yeah, there were some indigenous tribes, the Mayans and the Aztecs, that did some brutal stuff amongst each other, and some of the tribes warred, but nothing to this degree.
No. I mean, they killed, between disease and just straight up murder, they killed over 95% of all the natives. And they didn't, when the disease was hitting, they didn't really care. They were like, oh, look, they're all dying. It's not on the level of like, yes, there were human sacrifices in some of these cultures and things like that, but it's nothing on the level of what white people did to the indigenous between enslavement and murder. And so to like be like, well, they were killing each other anyway. It's like, no, dude, that's
no. And they would never destroy each other and destroy each other's land. I mean, like, that's the other thing you see. So for centuries, it's still happening today. Oh, here's a way to make money, but it's bad for the land and everything else. So what? We're going to make money. Like, that's what, these indigenous tribes were stewards of the land. They knew how to use it. I mean, I've talked about it on this show with all the California and Oregon and Washington wildfires, how like specifically in Australia, the indigenous tribes of the Aboriginals in Australia would deliberately burn land, but it was controlled. It was to redo the soil and all that, but they did it intentionally. And we just come in, I'll build complexes and blah, blah, blah. And like they figured out how to work in symmetry with the land and the environment and everything like that. And we just come in, smash them, kill them, take the gold, we're still doing that today.
Yeah, there's no consideration of sustainability, and this could be, I wasn't planning this, but this could be an easy segue to another massive government secret, or a secret of a combination of governments and capitalism. The UN has estimated
I just want to say real quick before we wrap up the segment.
Yeah.
Christopher Columbus can go fuck himself. So
and everything you just read there, that's on the plaques of the Columbus statues, right?
Yes. All of these horrific excerpts from his journal.
Yeah.
So read Howard Zinn's book.
Yeah, People's History. Yeah. Well, we can, if you have more, we can always come back. You were talking about the sustainability. You're talking about the sustainability, and a UN study, and this shouldn't really shock anyone, whether it's, a UN study makes it more official, but really people should kind of know this in the back of their head anyway. Found that, I think it was 2015 or something, found that there is no large industry on the face of the planet that would be profitable if it was forced to pay for its externalities. And externalities is really just a fancy term for destruction, pollution, everything that goes on that is not paid for, that is kind of pushed out on society. So you look at the creation of a McDonald's hamburger, and you have the raising of the cow, and you have the cow manure. Where does that go? And you have the destroying of the land in order to take care of the cow, and you have the shipping across the country, all the gas and the fossil fuels that's used, et cetera, and you go down the line, you have the plastics at McDonald's that are then thrown in the garbage, and everywhere along the line there are externalities. And if you add all those up, and if McDonald's or whatever industry had to pay for those things, had to pay for the cleanup, had to pay for raising the cow, had to pay for et cetera, none of these industries would be profitable. So if you take that analysis and you understand that, that means that capitalism subsidizes the death of our world, like large scale, writ large. We are paying for industries to exist that destroy the world so that they can get profit, but there would be no profit if they had to actually deal with the destruction they leave in their wake. Sorry to leave you speechless.
So, if I understand you correctly, this is why I should vote for Joe Biden? Did I hear you right?
Yeah. So vote Biden, hashtag still with her. Yeah.
No, it's really like, this is capitalism, which obviously started, as we talked about in the Christopher Columbus section, the early colonialism and imperialism. That's where its roots are. And none of it is sustainable. Like, none of it can continue. And it is finally coming to a crashing head. And there's some people who just don't want to admit that. Like, there's like,
not some people, most people.
About 87% of the populace, I guess, would be, they don't want to.
In this official study, 87, 88%, yeah.
It's, yeah, I don't.
I feel like you're just buffering right now. It's all buffering.
I'm caught in a freeze.
You're like, I was hoping the government secret you were going to bring up would be like they saw aliens in 1947. I wasn't ready for our whole system is killing us.
Yeah, like actually the rainbow leprechauns are real or something.
Leprechauns really do have the shoes that curl up at the end. I thought that was going to be.
And they're fun unless you try to take their gold, then they get mad or whatever. Not just, countdown to the destruction of the human race.
I'm sorry, Graham. I'll start bringing different stories. I'll find. I brought up the goggles on the dog. You got to be doggles. I brought up the doggles. You got to give me credit for something.
Oh, war doggles. That is amazing.
Because I value you and I want you to look happy. So I'll bring more doggle stories next time.
I'm barely hanging on, Lee. Barely hanging on.
Next week we notice there's a rope around his neck, and he's like, "So what stories you got this week, Lee?"
The reason I'm always 5 minutes late is there's 5 minutes of me just going, I can't do it. I can't do it. And then I gotta okay, let's put on a show.
So is this my doing, or were you feeling this way before we started this podcast? The rope around the neck.
We're getting ready for another episode of Government Secrets, ladies and gentlemen.
Were you happy-go-lucky before we started this podcast? Like, is it 10 weeks of this has really of me has really brought you to the crushing end point?
Yeah, because the 3 years of doing this show and the year of covering the Epstein stuff, that was just fun. That was
that was peaches and cream. Yeah,
that was like fa la la, fa la la la, fa la la. 1 horrific, 2 horrific, 3 horrific stories, 4 and 5. Graham doesn't want to live. So anyway.
You're like, Lee, you're such a bummer that I'm going to go back to interviewing Epstein sex victims.
Oh, God.
I'm going to go back to having them on because Lee Camp is a bummer. I mean,
God. at least with the Epstein, we can like, oh, there's some bad guys to go round up listening to Lee's just like Watchmen death clock or whatever. It's like 3 strokes to midnight or whatever. So, so folks, go to my Patreon page.
If you want to, folks, for every dollar you give, I will cut off 1 inch of the rope I have wrapped around my neck. And if we get enough dollars this week, I'll have no rope left to do the job.
So at the $10 hang gram rope level, you will get, and each level that I cut, I will autograph it and mail it to you. So if we don't get enough donors, I'm dead and it's your fault. What's this? Yeah, I don't know where to go from here, buddy.
Sorry, man. Sorry. We could talk about another one. I don't know whether this will make you feel any better. We could talk about we mentioned it before, but it might be a little less depressing because it's not so systemic. But the origins of the drug war, if you want to get into that.
Well, this will be a hoot. Now this is going to be
all right. This is a good time. Okay. This only has to do with 10, 20 million people locked up behind bars. This isn't like real pain. So
this is the kind of like laughter turns to mayhem, kind of hijinks, sitcom stuff. Yeah, this is what we need. All right, I'm in.
So we've mentioned the drug war. We mentioned that it's racist before. That's nothing new. I think most people that watch this know that the drug war is racist, both in the certain drugs get you more time in prison, the Rockefeller drug laws and things like that. But the crime bill that Biden passed also, just made it even worse and doubled the prison population. So we've talked about the Biden crime bill plenty. But what we haven't gotten into, I don't think, is the actual origins of the initial drug war were under Richard Nixon. And I think I have the quote here. This is so former Nixon domestic policy chief John Ehrlichman finally admitted, because a lot of people suspected like this thing seems kind of racist, but there was no proof that they could point to that its origins actually had been intentionally racist. Because no one's going to admit that, until in the 90s, I believe he did an interview, this domestic policy chief, John Ehrlichman. And he said in the interview, you understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't, and by we, he means the Nixon administration. We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war, the Vietnam War, or black. So we couldn't just pass a law saying you can't be black. So we knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black. But by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt their communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did.
Fa la la, fa la la. No,
hey, come on, man! That's so much more lighthearted than the entire planet's collapsing.
It is lighthearted. This is like an episode of Friends. Do
you want to change the name of the show to like sitcoms we like? You want to? Because we can do that if you. We can ask the people watching if they want to maybe shift to plants I thought about picking and putting in my scrapbook.
Somehow I would weave in Epstein, though. Somehow. Well, this first of all, back to yours. This is a great government secret and not surprising at all. I mean, first of all, Ehrlichman, solid, good guy. All the people in Nixon's White House, solid people. Not shocking that Nixon had a just deliberately racist policy, especially when you listen to the Nixon White House tapes where he's like, right, calling this guy a Jew and this, and everything else, and it also shows like how sophisticated the government. I mean, you take this and you tie in some of the other stories we've done on this show, MK Ultra, Operation Bloodstone and Paperclip and all those other things that have been and you and I both know, we've talked about it on each of our individual shows and on this one, of how the government has very systemically done a fantastic job of dividing activists and real lefties and stuff like that. And this is one of the ways they did it, because like the early hippies and like the Black Panthers and Malcolm X, they were like for real activists. And then they started infusing drugs in there and made it free sex and love. And they criminalized marijuana and heroin and all that, like you just talked about.
Well, and a lot of the kind of, I don't know about lighter drugs, but the mind expanding drugs, the psychedelics and things like that, you know, they were using, but I'd say most of them were using them responsibly. And it was opening their mind. They were, you know, viewing, you know, a lot of people do LSD and they realize, you know, we're part of nature and things like that. And so it actually was getting people to be more connected with the earth and the environment and the people. And so that was not good for the ruling elite, because that meant that they were suddenly against war. They were suddenly thinking beyond consumerism. Like they were thinking like, hey, maybe life is about like, you know, caring for each other and having a sustainable future and things like not buying a pair of shoes. And so it served multiple purposes. I mean, it was a way to lock up anti-war activists, but it was also a way to you know, you make these things heavily illegal, and people then are much easier to indoctrinate because they're not having these mind-expanding experiences with, you know, friends and family and stuff.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's anytime the ruling elite, anytime there's some movement or anything that's about working together and anti-war and community, and they're like, nope, we got to keep them fighting with each other, put them in jail, write this filthy bill, you know, whatever. I mean, you think about the money spent, like Reefer Madness, you know, like was mainly done by what's his name? That evil dude that basically, because hemp was a threat to
Dennis Miller.
Yeah, I was gonna say William Randolph Hearst, but basically the same thing. No, but like, you know, the hemp. So like the Constitution was written actually on hemp paper, and hemp has all these amazing uses. And these paper lumber guys, like William Randolph Hearst and others, helped, you know, demonize marijuana, even though the hemp that's used for products, rope, paper doesn't have the THC in it. So they demonized it, and they used it, and they're the old ally of racism of like, oh, you know, marijuana is the black jazz musicians, watch out, you know, like Reefer Madness was funded to keep this scare tactic going. So of course they piggybacked the Nixon cabal, piggybacked on all of that work that had already been done. Just again, to someone's money is threatened, or they just see people getting together as a threat, and they gotta just. It's why there's so many of these white, you know, these Karens and Kevins out there are so threatened. That's just generational white privilege. Someone's having fun, I'm going to be an idiot, and, you know, just like ruin it. So this is an uplifting story.
Well, and the Karens and Kevins are smoking weed too. Don't kid yourself.
No, they're probably not. They should be smoking more. And we should maybe put a little LSD in there.
Fine. Maybe they're not smoking weed, but they're drinking alcohol, which is, guess what? Also a drug. Yes. It's a drug that kills far more people than marijuana.
And it's a chemical depressant. Alcohol, it can make you more. I mean, yeah, I had a bit in my act that I did for like, you ever seen anybody high on weed go looking for a fight? Like that's never happened.
Yeah.
So it's good to know that there's more secrets under the Nixon bed that we can uncover on this show.
Well, you know, the reason I feel like that secret is important to know that was finally revealed is because a lot of people, you know, they talk about how the war on drugs is racist, but I think there's some people that naively think like, oh, it ended up being racist because, police were arresting black people more than white people. But war on drugs is a good thing in general. It was meant to help people and stop addiction and things like that. No, it was racist from the day it was thought up.
Yeah, it was racist. It was helped to divide activists and of all ethnicities, to keep them fighting with each other and divided, keep white America, again, scared, keep people divided rather than like, working class white people realizing they're getting screwed and Vietnam was bullshit, that they kept that divide going of like the working class, the hippies are making, and the Black Panthers, they're making problems. They're causing the problems. And, we support our troops in Vietnam or whatever. So they kept that divide going rather than working class whites, some of them did, but if they didn't divide everybody, working class whites might've gone, hey, wait a minute. How come it's all working class and poor and white and people of color going to Vietnam? How come the wealthy kids are all in college and they all got deferments? How come, wait a minute, this is a class. They're sending poor kids to war again. Like, so they needed this to get, that group of more working class white people to look at the hippies and the Black Panthers and everybody else as the problem and the troublemakers and the agitators. And it's such a great government secret because that's what's happening today.
Yeah. These
working class white nationalists, and I'm not excusing any of their awful racism or
wait, are you, I wasn't clear. You mean actually white nationalists as in like neo-Nazis, or you mean just white people who are nationalists?
Yeah, I didn't phrase that correctly. Some of these white nationalists or Second Amendment people are also working class white people, right? And if they realized that the war is not with, the governor of Michigan or whatever, that
or immigrants.
Or immigrants, or Black Lives Matter, or Antifa, or whatever, if they realize it's actually class warfare, they have to keep those guys divided because they don't want those guys getting together with Black Lives Matter and anybody else and the DSA and anybody else, all of us on the left, and go, yeah, we're all getting screwed over by the 1%, because then those guys with guns, rather than trying to, to overtake the Capitol building in Michigan or whatever, or showing up at a Black Lives Matter with guns, they're all going to go show up on Wall Street, or they're going to show up outside of a billionaire's home. And
divide and conquer is, I'd say the two biggest things that are used in order to keep us all in line, obeying and everything, is divide and conquer and fear. And so they use divide and conquer within the United States, keeping us fighting amongst each other. But then they also point to the evil villain, the great other, that is going to get you if daddy oligarchy doesn't take care of you. And so the great other right now is mainly Russia, a little bit Iran, a little bit China. But, those are the main ones right now. It used to be more terrorists are going to get you. And that started to fade because people were like, I haven't seen a terrorist like in my neighborhood in like years, I don't think. And so now they were like, oh, it's not the terrorists anymore. It's Russians. And, they got to keep finding the great other. So yeah, those are probably the two biggest things that are useful to keeping us in line, obeying, just pointing at others and directing our anger that way rather than directing our anger at the top. Because if the lower class unites, 90% of us, 80% of us get together and decide we've had a fucking enough, then the game is over. The game of capitalism is over. The game of oligarchy is over. It all fucking collapses if we unite as the non-uber rich.
Yeah, and the thing I would add to that is distract. That's another tactic they use to keep us afraid and divided, is they use distractions, like we talked about earlier in the show. We're still arguing about Roe v. Wade and whether or not, how much fracking each side is wanting to do or whatever. So it's keeping us distracted, whatever. Like the first Trump impeachment was all about Russian bullshit because it was a distraction from the emollients, all the corruption, as you said, from both parties. Like we're always
and a distraction from the fact that the Democrats don't stand for anything anymore. So the things people were demanding in America, like healthcare, well, the Democrats aren't going to fucking even talk about getting it for them. So, well, we've got to distract Russiagate. That's why we didn't win, not because we fucking don't stand for a goddamn fucking thing.
Yeah. Well, this was a fantastic government secrets, Lee. I laughed. I cried.
I nearly hung myself.
It was fantastic. So
I think next week maybe you put a bed of nails behind you and you just slowly back towards it. The worse things get.
Yeah, that's what I'll do. Just slowly back into this bed of nails. Just like, ah! Well, Lee, where can people watch and follow all your fine business?
Thanks, folks, for joining us. All of my stuff, including my TV show Redacted Tonight, my columns, my live streams, my other podcast, Common Censored, that's all at leecamp.com. That's probably the best place to go get it because I am one of the most suppressed shows on the internet, so you kind of have to actually do the work and go to leecamp.com. Don't expect the big tech platforms to put it in your feed. You will not be fed any Lee Camp. Lee Camp does not get fed to the people. The people have to go and actually select Lee Camp from the buffet nowadays.
You have to go search it out.
Yeah.
On the side of Lee Camp, way hidden in the back of the buffet. It's not on the menu, but you got to go find it.
And my free comedy special is at leecampamerican.com. They can go watch full hour taped before the pandemic live in Los Angeles.
Oh, nice. I was going to do a special. Ron and I were each going to shoot specials in April of this year. That got scrapped.
Really?
Yeah. But folks, please make sure if you're listening to this on Libsyn or Spotify or wherever that you give it a positive review and share Government Secrets Podcast out on your social media. And then I'm at grahamelwood.com. I have my own YouTube show called Political Vigilante. We go live about 4 or 5 days a week and drop 2 or 3 clips a day. So check that out. Hit the subscribe, the like button. And also I'm on Rockfin, which is a blockchain cryptocurrency platform. Rockfin.com/Graham Elwood. We do Government Secrets every week, usually drop new episodes on Monday. So, spread the word. We're only 12 episodes into this fine program. And
we've got at least 5 more before Graham takes his life. So I really want to make those good. These next 5 are going to be killer because I really want to get them in there, squeeze them in before you decide to end it all.
I'm either going to end it all or just go so off grid. I'm just gone. I just have like moccasins and a ukulele, and that's it.
Next week, I feel like I'm gonna be like, so did you know that one of the Teletubbies was gay? That's the secret I brought with me. Everything's fine, Graham. We're okay. It's just let's talk about Teletubbies. I'm gonna be like Robin Williams talking to the people in Awakenings. How are you? It's fine. It's gonna be fine.
And then we're gonna uncover that the Teletubbies were actually part of a CIA operation to infiltrate children's brain with whatever war propaganda.
Infiltrate children's brains with gay.
If we make a certain percentage of the population gay, then we can subvert war. Anyway, that's our show, folks. Lee, thank you so much, and we'll listen to you guys. I don't. This is a horrible wrap up.
And we will hear you guys next week. We will touch and smell everybody out there.
I don't know.
I am saying words because I am trying to fill the last minutes and Goodyear tires and Michelin Man and clouds. I'll see you later.
Thanks, Lee. You have great words. That's the wrap up of the show.
Later, man.
All right, buddy.